It's a Tuesday evening, somewhere just after 8. I'm at the kitchen table, the one with the small ring mark from a mug, the one I keep meaning to do something about. And I'm scrolling through my phone in that loose, unfocused way you scroll when you're not really looking for anything. The Voice Memos app is open. I'd forgotten I even used it. There's a recording from yesterday afternoon, 2 minutes and 41 seconds, saved simply as Tu's idea, because I couldn't be bothered to type more. I tap it. The first word comes through the little speaker at the bottom of the phone. It's mine. Of course it's mine. I made it. But before the second word arrives, I've already frowned. Just slightly. The corners of my mouth pull a fraction tighter. My eyebrows do that small inward thing they do when something is faintly off. And without thinking about it, my thumb has started moving toward the pause button. I don't pause it. I let it play for another few seconds. Then I do pause it. I turn the phone face down on the table. And I sit there for a moment, because the thing I just did, the frowning, the reaching to stop it, is stranger than it looks. I made that recording. It is, in every literal sense, me. And I just tried to make myself stop talking. I don't think this is a private experience. Almost everyone I know who has a phone has done some version of this. A voicemail you accidentally hear back. A video your friend took at a dinner where you were laughing. A voice note you sent and then, for some reason, decided to listen to before sending the next one. The reaction is so small, you might never have named it. A tiny grimace, a faint internal no. The wish to skip past it, or turn the volume down, or, if you're alone, fast forward through the parts where you speak. And here's the strange thing. Almost no one talks about this. It's one of those experiences that sits just below the line of conversation. We have it constantly, and we never mention it. There is actually a name for the reaction, from a piece of psychology research done in the 1960s. They called it voice confrontation. I'm going to say that phrase once and then leave it alone, because the name is heavier than the thing it's pointing at. It sounds clinical. It sounds like a disorder, or at least a syndrome. And the actual feeling isn't like that. The actual feeling is much lighter. A small, almost embarrassed, almost amused recoil. Less I cannot bear this, and more, oh, that's apparently what I sound like. The interesting part isn't that we don't like it. The interesting part is how mild it is, and how reliable. Like the body has a small polite reflex for this specific situation, and it's been waiting there all along. You didn't know you had it until you pressed play, so what is that little reflex exactly? What is it actually objecting to? The first thing most people learn about this is simple. The version of your voice you hear when you're speaking, and the version that comes out of a speaker, are physically two different sounds. When you speak, sound reaches you by two routes at once. Some travels out into the room, bounces off whatever's there, and comes back through the air. Some travels inside you, through the soft tissue of your throat and chest and head, and arrives from underneath, so to speak, without ever leaving your body. The route through the body carries the lower frequencies more easily, so the version you hear from inside is warmer, thicker, a little fuller, closer. The version that comes back through a recording is the room version, the one that only travels through air. It sounds thinner, brighter, a little farther away, a little smaller. So already, before anything else, the two sounds genuinely are different. You're not imagining it. The texture is different. But if that were the whole answer, the frown wouldn't be quite so odd. If it were only a question of frequencies, hearing the recording would feel a bit like hearing an old radio version of yourself. Familiar but tinny. You'd notice, not recoil. That's the first layer. There's another one underneath it, and it's the one that does most of the work. Here is the thing I keep coming back to. When you speak, your brain isn't just listening for the sound. Your brain is, in some sense, already prepared for it. Think about what speaking actually involves. Your brain decides on a word. It sends instructions to dozens of small muscles in your throat, your jaw, your tongue, your lips. They move. Air pushes through. Sound comes out, and then, almost, your ears report back what the sound was. But your brain doesn't wait. It can't, really. The whole loop happens too fast. So at the moment your brain sends the instructions to make the sound, it also sends, off to the side, a kind of internal copy. A sort of here's what I'm about to hear note, delivered to the part of you that does the hearing. That note doesn't replace what your ears report. It joins it. It softens it. It primes the listening. So that when the sound arrives, it's already half expected. It isn't a surprise. It's the sound you are about to hear, arriving on time. This is why, when you're talking, you don't experience your own voice the way you experience someone else's. Someone else's voice arrives in your head from outside, unpredicted, fresh, fully there. Your own voice arrives partly from outside and partly from inside, and the inside part is doing some of the work of recognizing it before it gets there. So the voice you know as yours, the voice you've been hearing your whole life when you speak, isn't just a sound. It's a sound that's been made familiar in advance. A sound your body and your mind have helped to produce together and helped to recognize together. By the time it reaches you, you were already part of the way through hearing it. You aren't exactly hearing yourself when you speak. You're hearing a version of yourself that you helped prepare. And then, one day, on a kitchen table, you press play on a recording. The voice that comes out of the speaker hasn't been prepared. There was no internal note sent ahead. Your brain didn't help make it. It just arrives, like any other sound from the room, fully formed, fully outside. That's what the frown is about. It isn't that the recording sounds wrong. It's that, for the first time, the sound is arriving the way every other sound arrives, unannounced. So when I press play on that little memo from yesterday, choose idea, 2 minutes 41, the phone isn't doing anything mystical. It isn't unmasking me. It isn't catching me out. It's just a small speaker, vibrating air. The voice it produces is no truer than the one I hear in my head. It's just different in one specific way. I'm not the one helping to produce it. What's actually happening in those first few seconds isn't that I'm meeting my real self for the first time, it's that I'm shifting position. When I was speaking yesterday, I was inside the speaker, the person making the sound, the person preparing to hear it. Now, listening today, I'm outside the speaker. I'm in the audience. I'm in the position my friends are in when I leave them a voice note, the position my co-workers are in on a call, the position anyone has ever been in who has heard me say anything. And the small odd thing about it is that, in that moment, both of those people are me. The one in the recording, and the one frowning at the phone on a Tuesday evening, the speaker and the listener. And for most of the time I've been alive, those two have been the same person, or at least, the same person doing both jobs at once, with the speaker's job slightly disguising the listener's. When you press play, the disguise comes off, not because anything is revealed about who you really are, just because, briefly, the speaker steps out of the way and lets you listen the way everyone else has been listening all along. The phone is face down on the table again. I haven't moved it. Here is something I think about whenever I find myself frowning at one of these recordings. Until about 150 years ago, Nobody on this planet had ever done what I just did. Think about that for a second. For all the tens of thousands of years that humans have been speaking, telling stories around fires, calling out to each other across fields, arguing, praying, singing, whispering to children at night, nobody could press play. Nobody could hear themselves from outside. You could hear the river. You could hear other people saying your name. You could hear your own breath against a wall on a cold morning. But the sound of your own speaking voice, the way another person hears it, that was simply unavailable. It was held inside the moment of speaking, and when the moment ended, the sound was gone. In 1877, that changed. Edison built a machine that could capture sound and play it back, letting a voice leave the moment of speaking and return later as sound in the room again. I don't want to make too much of this, because it's easy to make too much of it. People didn't suddenly have a soul-shaking encounter with themselves in 1877. The early recordings were brief, scratchy, novelty things. The first reaction to the new machine was mostly amazement that the machine worked at all, not deep reflection on the nature of self-perception. But somewhere in there, very quietly, a new kind of human experience started. The sound of your own voice could now exist apart from your body. It could be saved. It could be played back. It could be heard by you, later, in a room where you were no longer speaking. That had never happened before in the history of the species, which means that the small frown, the one I made 20 minutes ago, the one you've probably made today, is part of a very recent kind of human moment. We are the people who get to hear ourselves from outside. We didn't ask for it particularly. It came along with the machines, and now it's just part of what owning a phone is like. If I sit with all of this, the roots through the body, the brain's quiet preparation, the 150 years of recording, what starts to feel true is that there were several versions of me on that Tuesday evening, and they were all in the room at the same time. There was the one I usually hear, the inside voice version, made from the air in the kitchen and the resonance in my chest, and the brain's quiet preparation, all blended together into something that has felt my whole life like my voice. There was the one in the recording, the version that everyone else has been hearing whenever I speak. The version my mother has heard for as long as I've had a voice. The version the person I sat next to on the bus this morning would have heard, if I'd said anything. And there was a third one, which is harder to point at but is definitely in the room. The version of me I imagine other people are hearing. The voice I think I have, when I picture myself in conversations. The voice I'd hope to have, if I were being honest about hoping. None of these is fake. None of them is the real one. There are three different things the word me has been doing, quietly, all along, and most of the time, they fit together neatly enough that I don't notice they're three. They're stacked. They feel like one thing. What pressing play does, I think, is briefly pull them slightly apart. Like three transparent sheets that were perfectly aligned, suddenly being shifted just a millimeter against each other. The picture is still recognizable, but you can see for a second that it was made of layers. I pick the phone up off the table and turn it face up. I press play again. The recording starts. The first word arrives. I feel my face do the small thing it did before. The slight pull at the mouth. The slight lift of one eyebrow. The frown. It hasn't gone away. Knowing all of this doesn't make it go away. The strangeness of hearing yourself from outside isn't a misunderstanding, and it isn't a problem to be solved. It's just, that's what it's like to be a creature who normally helps to produce the sound of its own voice and is now, for 2 minutes and 41 seconds, not allowed to help. But the frown means something slightly different now. or not different exactly. The same thing, but with a bit more room around it. When I started, the frown was just a small recoil. That isn't me. Now it's more like a small recognition. Oh, that's what I sound like from the other side. The recoil and the recognition are made of the same gesture. The face doesn't change. But what it's responding to has, very quietly, shifted. I let the recording play through. It's not that interesting, actually. It was an idea I'd had walking home, something about a sentence I'd been working on. By the time it finishes, I've stopped paying attention to the voice and started paying attention to what the voice was saying. The screen goes dark. The kitchen is quiet again. I think there are smaller versions of this experience that do not involve a phone at all. A photograph someone took of you at a party, where you happened to be mid-sentence, and your face was doing something you didn't know it did. The reflection of yourself in a shop window you walked past without meaning to. A glimpse, in a video at a wedding, of how you stand when you think no one's looking. A moment at work when you heard your own laugh from across a room, slightly delayed, and didn't recognize it until you realized it must have been yours. You've been meeting yourself from the outside in small ways your whole life. The voice memo is just a particularly clean version of it. A controlled experiment, almost, done by accident, on a kitchen table, by someone who only meant to remember an idea.